Well, hello there. It's Jeff Shaw, broadcasting from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. And for our typical Thursday night, 7 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock in the morning over the UK. We're right above us, up in the Northern Hemisphere, sitting right above us, just like personality squares, right at the very top. In pink is the co-host. Her name is Andrina Forrest. And in between us is our guest for tonight. So, Andrina, you want to take it away and bring us up to speed with what's happening tonight?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dreaming the New Dream. And wherever you are in the world, what's the date today? I don't even know what day it is. Is it the 19th?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 19th of May, 2022. Just in case anybody's listening back, because I know sometimes I think, oh, I wonder when that was. So anyway, without further ado, I have the lovely Dr. Sandra Tuszynska, who is up in North Brisbane. Are you North Brisbane?
West of Brisbane.
North, right,
up in the country. Northwest.
Way out in the country. I met Sandra years ago when we used to go to our friend Katrina and Linda, and it was funny because I would turn up at Katrina's, and so Sandra would be there, or she would arrive, and it was just different times throughout the year. We would both arrive at the same time. It was bizarre, and we didn't even know that was happening. Anyway, today you're going to talk about fungi, and I did put one of your funny pictures up, which I had a lot of rude comments about what it could be. So I really don't know anything about fungi, I got to be honest. So I'm really looking forward to you sharing how it all started. And that's the one where people were saying this was a sex toy. They wouldn't like to sit on it and all sorts of things like that.
I didn't see it. I didn't see that. That is wonderful. Wow.
So,
I'll tell you what I call it. I call it the alien butthole. That's my name for it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. So anyway, I would love you to share more, because when we were talking, you said that trees can't survive without fungi. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you to share. You were born in Poland, and your journey and how it's all unfolded, and how where you are now with all the beautiful work you do with fungi. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be interviewed about this topic that's dear to my heart, and it's great to reconnect with you, Andrina, in these settings. And so I'm just my journey is pretty simple, I suppose. In a way, I grew up in Poland till I was 12 in the communist regime. It was very different to Australia. I guess when I came here, I've always been interested in nature my whole life, just completely obsessed with it. So and I sort of didn't know what to do at school. I loved biology, but then I loved history and archaeology, ancient history, modern history. I'm just passionate about education in every kind of way, languages, everything. So, biology was always something, like nature was always something that called my heart. But I ended up doing agricultural science. So I'm an agricultural scientist that has majored in microbiology, and fungi wasn't something that's actually ever really spoken about much at university level. Actually, really, it's not a known science, the science of mycology, which is the study of fungi. So unlike, I'm not surprised you don't know much about fungi. Really, they're just these weird things that people kind of walk by and go, oh, what's that? An alien butthole. But, the thing was that I just basically, I was really, really, in ag science, you learn a lot about the destruction of environment, the destruction of food, our food systems. Like I was just overwhelmed with how much toxicity, how much antibiotics, how much pesticides, how much heavy metals is being used, like all kinds of really nasty stuff. So I endeavored to actually reverse the damage. That was my passion for it was, to sort of understand what are the systems and what can we use in order to reverse the damage that we have done through agriculture and other ways that we treat the environment and humanity as a whole, like all of the biodiversity that we have, everything's sort of just mistreated, it feels like. So that's where I came to that conclusion that I can't do anything else other than learning how to undo it. all the damage. And at the same time, I realized the only way to do it was to do it through microbiology. So microbes, I've started learning, you know, that microbes can eat pesticides, and that's what I did my honors project on. So I sort of veered towards the microbial world, because animal science was all about how to kill animals and how to feed them antibiotics, which I wasn't going to ever do. Plant science was pretty much similar. Entomology, which I love, which is insects, was also about killing them in agriculture. It's all about pests. So everything that I loved was just getting killed. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I've got to go somewhere else with this. So I ended up doing a project on remediation of pesticides, specifically diuron herbicide, which is extensively used in the agricultural industry. Specifically, cotton is grown with this diuron herbicide. But what it does is it kills grasses, and then it goes off into the waterways, ends up in the ocean, and kills the dugong feeding grasses. So dugongs become extinct because of it, because their grasses get killed. So I looked at how can we degrade this? Can the soil organisms decompose this herbicide? And of course they could. So that got me like excited, you know. And then when I was looking for a PhD project, there wasn't really much. I was in Europe traveling, going back to my roots, staying in Poland for a little while, traveling around Europe. And then I found a PhD project, or someone who would take me on back in Australia at the University of New South Wales. And but she was like, what do you want to do? You know, my supervisor. And I started going like, oh, I don't know, like, you know, I really want to do this remediation stuff. So once again, it ended up being fungi and how they end up working with heavy metals and how they can prevent heavy metal toxicity where trees are grown in heavy metal rich soils, like after mining, for example, where trees can't grow because the level of toxicity in the soil is so high. So these fungi on the roots, which naturally feed the trees and all plants, they were heavy metal. The ones I particularly worked with were heavy metal tolerant, and no one knew how these fungi can prevent this heavy metal entering the tree and killing it. So my job was to find out what happens on a cell level, on a cellular level. That's exactly the picture that you're showing is one of mycorrhizal fungi in Australia. So mycorrhizal meaning root fungus. And basically the interaction is that this feathery substance grows, which actually belongs to the mushroom underground. It actually feeds off a root system of a plant, in this particular case, probably a eucalyptus tree, and they feed each other. The plant feeds photosynthetic sugars to the fungus, and the fungi mine minerals to feed to the plant. So basically, all of pretty much over 95%, if not more, plants rely on this symbiotic relationship on their roots with fungi. So that's a specific group of fungi that does the feeding. And this is, as Andrina mentioned earlier, that, you know, trees can't survive without fungi. And that's true. All trees have these symbiotic relationships. That's the same one, would you believe it or not? But it's the egg of it, or the beginning of that mushroom before it becomes all beautiful and opened. So
the one we've just
have
seen.
this system.
Wow.
Yeah, those two. Those are all the same. Those are little twins that, yep. And there's an egg one, I think, as well, where it literally looks like an egg. So they're born, they come up, and they, you know, and they just come up through the soil with extreme force. They've got extreme amounts of turgor pressure with water in them to move through bricks even, you know. They lift bricks sometimes. It's unbelievable the strength these fungi have. So fungi are so strange. They are not animals. They're not plants. What are they? They actually in 1965, I think it was, they only just got their own kingdom. Before that, they were classed as plants, and basically they're not. They're completely different, and they're more related to animals than they are to plants. So they literally, and their body is made out of the same thing as insect is made out of. So insects are made out of chitin, which is a very, very hardy material, even harder than wood, and, you know, structurally more stable. That's why you can sometimes see, like, you know, insect exoskeletons on the ground, and they don't really decompose much. And fungi are made out of the same substance. So they're very much more like a stationary animal more than anything else. They don't differentiate their cells either. So, like, you know, yes. Yep.
Sorry. Is this in Australia, this one here? Are these mostly in
all
Australia that you're showing?
Yes, these are all Australian. These are actually mostly taken up at Woodfordia, where I work. So I document fungi there, and I run the Mycology research project, which is a community science or citizen science project. So I take a lot of images from there just to document fungi and do all kinds of cool stuff that I'll get into later. But yes, basically we can't survive without these guys. And if you think, I'll ask you a question, but what would you think would happen if fungi that decompose wood, like you can see here, they're growing on wood, what would happen if they didn't do that? What do you guys reckon could happen? Like if you had a forest where nothing was degraded back down to the forest, what do you think would happen with the forest?
Well, Mother Nature,
Die off.
yeah, Mother Nature usually acts as she breaks down, didn't it? So my understanding of the fungi is that they get into the root system and they actually, like an intelligence system of communication that interacts with the trees, and they've got this really, as you say, symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
But that's a beautiful pattern, isn't it? They look like little flowers, don't they? Look lovely.
So beautiful. That's the underside. And this particular one, Schizophyllum commun, actually it's plastic. They're so good at decomposing wood. So this is growing in a bathroom, in a shower. So
it looks like the tree of life, doesn't it?
They're so gorgeous, aren't they? So what happens with you've got the ones we just spoke about, and Jeff just mentioned the mycorrhizal fungi, which are the symbiotic ones on the roots, and then they grow mushrooms. But these particular ones we're looking at now are decomposers, and you can see they're growing on the wood. And if that wood was never decomposed, the trees would just pile up. The dead would just pile up in the forest, and nothing would ever happen. And basically it would just choke everything. But what fungi do is they churn it, and they've got very, very big consortium of very strong enzymes to break down very hardy materials like wood and plastic. And so what they do is then they churn it back down to mineral form again. And when that happens, the trees then can take up those nutrients that they themselves have created with the fungi on their roots. And the root symbiotic fungi once again take up those nutrients. So in this way, the tree is literally feeding on itself, if you can think of it that way. Because as it's, dropping limbs, it's decomposing its limbs, it's going back to the system through the fungi, decomposed, back to nutrients, and taken up through the tree again. So it's very, very efficient circular economy happening, and as Jeff was mentioning, the information system, it's literally like the internet where the fungi share resources, information about the forest, how many animals are jumping, across the landscape. They communicate various impulses from the environment and pass that back to the underground to then moderate what happens above ground. It's an incredibly intelligent system, incredibly intelligent, incredibly versatile in what it does and how it solves problems and how it moves and how it communicates. And of course, we don't see all of it or not any of it, because it's all underground until rain comes and some of these guys pop up. So see the beautiful exudates, which are these little droplets of color that's produced by the fungi as well. And the fungi are produced when you see the white fluffy, on some of these images, you'll see the white fluffy bits. That's called the mycelium. You can think of it as mycelium, just to think of it like, ciliums, mycelium. So what the mycelium does is it's basically the cells of the fungi, but in many, they're very long, they're called hyphae. And they basically, when there's a lot of them, they're microscopic and you can see them under the microscope. But when there's loads of them, they become the mycelium, they become visible. And that's what then grows the mushroom or the other structure, because not all fungi are mushrooms, of course. Like this one is a polypore. It's like a bracket fungi, of course, it's got a different shape. Oh. And this one is altogether a different one. It's like just magnificent. I forget its name, actually.
I love the color.
Species, but not. It's just stunning, isn't it? They come in so many shapes and sizes. And of course, when they're, they spores, they've got spores, they reproduce by spores, just like pollen from, plants, from flowers. But when these spores actually come out at the G-force of launching a rocket into the atmosphere, that's the kind of force they come out with. A lot of them end up in the atmosphere, and they actually nucleate water droplets, and they bring down rain. So without fungi, we can't even have rain. The amount of services that fungi provide is just astounding.
Hey,
just astounding.
There's a step in there. Hey, this is right out of left field, but it's only because you said a rocket and you said a few other things. There's obviously some people have got some really depth of understanding just like you, and they've taken it to another perspective. Have you ever watched the new Star Trek Discovery series?
I haven't, but it's all about fungi, isn't it? It's all about the mycelium.
Yeah, they talked. Instead of using the lithium crystals, they're using the spores. And there's a guy who's in tune with the mycelium network. It goes right through the whole galaxy or universe. And this guy just sits in a chair and he just tunes in the mycelium network, just like what you're talking about just now with the fungi talking to the trees and the roots and the networking. It's really intelligent. Someone's taken it to another level, as above, as below, and take it into that particular show to show that you can go instantaneously anywhere in that mycelium network throughout the universe, as long as you've got someone who's in tune with that frequency. I mean, you just said some magic words there, and I'm thinking, hang on a sec, we need to talk about how most people are watching this and saying, oh, it's fungi, it's not really doing anything. But if you take it to another level where people are involved in galactic or new consciousness of thinking, then you can actually bring them back into your world and say, well, it's right here on this planet. It's just how our network operates.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Well, nothing as above, so below. Like, obviously, nature is designed to have the same patterns throughout the universe, and so it makes sense that it go microscopic where we can't even see it with the naked eye. But interestingly, everything like the internet, kind of people mostly are familiar with how the internet network looks and how it's this fractal geometric structure of the same patterns developing like a tree, when you go longer branch, smaller branch, smaller branch, smaller branch, but it's the same pattern. So that structure is how the mycelium is works. So obviously it tells us a lot that the entire galaxies are also formed in that pattern as well. The internet is formed in that pattern. Mycelium are veins, the trees, the river systems. Everything has got this particular geometry. So it just tells us that everything's designed on these patterns because these patterns are the most functional and the best for anything to sort of have an effect in a big way. So it teaches us that, if we hook into these patterns or we start recognizing these things and how nature works, then we can achieve great things. And so not surprisingly, they made the series on Star Trek based on Paul Stamets, because Paul Stamets talks about fungi a lot. He's the guru in America. There's many more gurus now. When I say guru, someone who's passionate and is able to explain these systems and has a mind that can pick up the nuances that are like when you get to love your topic, love your organism of choice or passion of choice, whatever it is, you do end up learning these things because you just absorb the information because it fascinates you, and I think it's infectious in that way. And that's why it's so good that this is coming out through sci-fi now as well. And I haven't watched it, but everyone's been telling me about it. I've got to do it one day. Hey. But just to get back into our big message picture, bigger sort of, I suppose for me, it's like, what's happening at the moment is what's happening in the world, at the moment is we're going through this crisis. Fungi are disappearing because of climate change. Climate change is killing everything, basically, because these systems depend on particular patterns of moisture and, in the atmosphere, carbon. Like carbon is sequestered by fungi, for example, but we're losing fungi. So the fungi that are underground sequester most of the carbon. So it's not trees. It's trees basically feeding fungi, plants feeding fungi and sucking up, feeding those sugars from photosynthesis. And that is carbon. So in 20 years' time, if we decided now to really, really hone in on this system and go, okay, in agricultural crops, let's get these fungi back to our systems. Let's reforest huge amounts of land. Let's get the fungi to sequester the carbon down. We could literally reverse climate change within 20 years, 15 to 20 years to pre-industrial levels. That's been studied, that we know this as a scientific fact. But it just takes knowledge and passion to do it, to support these networks that are in place. Fungi have been around for millions of years, 400 or so, 500 million years ago, probably longer than this. But when they came onto land with plants, because that's where they came in, that symbiosis from the ocean, that's how it started. They made soil. So the algae and the fungi got together, came out on the land and made first soils, because fungi can decompose rock as well. These mycorrhizal fungi in particular that, live on the roots of the trees. So it's like so much of our history and why life came about happened because of fungi and plants, of course, but fungi can live without the sun as well, which is another incredible alien kind of a way of life where you don't really need, if we had no sun, fungi could still feed us because they're so delicious and nutritious as well. So when you think about it from those perspectives, you've got this whole, if that disappears, these networks, and by the way, the ocean floor is apparently covered in mycelium as well. So Jeff, talking about the entire system up, in space being covered in fungal networks, it happens on Earth. We're all literally connected. The entire network all ocean is connected through these fungal networks, and so is the Earth. So it is very much a global phenomenon that's just like this unseen. What is it? What was that movie? The other sci-fi movie that was very famous with Keanu Reeves. With the numbers, the blue pill. And the red pill.
Matrix.
But it's the same, the Matrix. So it is kind of like the Matrix, it's like this interconnected network of information sharing and whatnot. But to me, it's like if we just don't care for it, at the moment we've got lots of fungi coming up and we can see what's in the environment because we've had so much rain in Australia, in Queensland. But without that rain, we don't see what's there because it's not popping up. But what if we were to lose this? And this is what worries me the most with agriculture. We're poisoning everything. Glyphosate, Roundup kills fungi. It's literally a fungal murdering device. So the more we put that onto our systems, into our foods, it's also killing the fungi within our gut and the other microbes. And once again, we can't get nutrition if we don't have those guys in our gut because we're just a walking fungi when you think about it. Because it turns out we only know 10% of our cells are human. So we're basically microbial organisms, consortia, multicellular, but in the sense of multi-species within our own body. So it's the same in nature. Every organism it relies on these fungal and bacterial networks to actually provide the rest, to build that, the bottom of the rung of the ladder.
And now we're part of the food chain, so why do we enjoy eating mushrooms? Hey?
Why do we enjoy it? Or why we don't eat it? Did you say we don't?
We do. I mean, we have this insatiable appetite for mushrooms, I know they say it's got iodine, it's good through your throat and all that, but is there something else that...
It's got every...
Hey?
Yeah, certainly they've got tons of nutrients. They're very meaty. They've got a really good texture. Texture's really, humans love texture. Fungi need to be cooked very well, but they definitely have a load of different nutrients, and they're only just discovering what. So many medicinal mushrooms that are being used, in chemotherapy in Japan and China, and so there's all kinds of applications. Growing materials. I should have given you some photos, but I had photos of bowls I have grown using fungal, literally using oyster mushrooms to grow bowls and bricks, and you can build buildings out of them, and you can do anything out of fungi because of that structure that I talked about initially, where it's made out of chitin, but also because they've got this network of this mycelium intertwining, creating the most amazing structurally stable compounds as a result, because fungi just grow into whatever they're eating, and out of that waste, whether it's wood or whether it's paper or whether it's material like cotton, they will just eat it up, chew it up, but at the same time make their own body out of it, making it extremely hardy. So there's a few companies in the world now that are making materials, building cars. IKEA's packaging is using mycomaterials. Myco meaning fungi. So there's so many applications these guys have, and but for me personally, it's the agricultural system. If we're going to continue eating food and producing food, we need to get our fungi back in the soil. So I'm about to start writing yes.
I I've got a friend that works with the elementals, and she's always said, don't eat mushrooms because they are really not happy that everybody's eating mushrooms. So, do you work with the...
Go on.
Mushrooms are interesting in that they're just a sex organ. So they like a fruit. So if anything, they should be eaten, because every time you eat a mushroom, you pull out its spores. And in fact, Australia in particular, we have these amazing, I mean, all over the world, there's these systems of interconnectedness through fungi where, like eucalypt trees, for example, they require an organism. A lot of our truffle-like fungi, so fungi that have like truffles underground because it's dry, so they don't show up. So someone has to find them. So the fungi have developed all kinds of funky smells where bettongs, for example, our Australian marsupials, will eat the truffles, will dig them up because they smell like poo or smell like asphalt or smell like some other gross thing. But they're attracted to the smell, and they'll dig them up and they eat it. And when they go and they get their paws dirty, they get their spores of the mushroom goes on their little fur, then they jump away and they poop out the spores. And of course, when another animal comes and digs it in, or in fact, there's even another level of symbiosis in this, where sometimes there will be a beetle, a dung beetle, sitting on the fur around the bum of the creature, of the bettong or wallaby, and it waits for the poo to drop. And then when the poo drops, the beetle goes underground, takes the poo down there because it's going to lay its eggs in the poo. And while it does that, it intersects a root of a tree, and then that poo with the spores inoculates the tree. So if we lose either the beetle, if we lose the fungus, if we lose any of those four symbiotic, any of those symbiotic organisms, the system can't function anymore. So without the bettong, the animal, eating the fungus, without, then there's no dispersal of the spores, so no inoculation of another tree. It's just amazing. So fungi are literally, they're just sex organs. That's why they're so amazing and they look so great, because they're really, they're attractive. They're telling us I'm attractive because I'm important. And for us to eat them is like basically doing a service, just like when we eat fruit. We poo out the seed and a new tree grows, and it's the same with the fungal. I don't really particularly love eating fungi because you've got to cook them a lot. I'm very lazy, so I just want to eat, salads and stuff, and fruit. But at the same time, I mean, they are delicious, and when prepared well, I mean, as you say, Jeff, they are just delicious things, and people love to eat them, and they're easy to grow. They're so cheap to grow, so easy to grow. So it's just like really wonderful food to have, especially if there's like Armageddon and there's no sun for a while. Easy to eat fungi, easy to eat mushrooms, grow them really quickly on paper, and Bob's your uncle, as we say in Australia.
Well, Andrew has come up and asked if there's a common mushroom that we can eat that detoxes harmful metals.
Yes. So that is actually interesting, because in Europe, like where I grew up, we used to forage for mushrooms a lot. Europeans do that a lot. And the fungi that I worked on in my PhD was actually a heavy metal tolerant mushroom called Bacillus involutus. And it's an edible mushroom that many people consume in Europe. Unfortunately, when you pollute the environment, these guys will then take up into the mushroom a lot of the pollutants, and these heavy metal accumulating fungi do that. So when you eat them, you actually toxify your body. And it was quite dangerous at some point after the Soviet era, because Russia used to put a lot of industrial toxins into forests just to get rid of stuff, and Poland was quite toxic for a while. Maybe it still is, I don't know. But it became dangerous to eat these mushrooms that people have been foraging for thousands of years, But I suppose it works in the same way in the body. Like if you do have eat mushrooms, they very much, they're not easy to digest, so they would sweep up a lot of your toxins in the intestines, I would assume. I don't see why not. And I'm sure there's like mushrooms that people take just for that purpose. So yeah, they're very good in all kinds of ways. Besides poisonous ones, of course.
Can I ask a question?
There's only a few.
Um,
Yes.
obviously, when I'm out and about taking pictures, I have taken fungi because I think it looks pretty, but I've not really given it any other focus, taking a picture. So obviously, when I'm out and about now taking pictures, I'm just going to be drawn to fungi now that I've got that awareness. Is there anything we could all do to help bring that balance back with fungi in any way, or to do its own devices, let nature take its, do what it needs to do?
Yes, look, there's like in the garden situation. By the way, I'll just rewind a little bit, because if you take photos of fungi, make sure you've seen in my photos that it will have the underside as well. You always want to see, if you want
Right.
someone, not always, like in this one we don't, but the other ones I've taken, you could see the underside. I probably didn't give the best pictures
It's
of that, but there's a
beautiful,
few
isn't
there
it?
where you can, yeah, like, you know how you said it looks like a flower, like some of them, like, and you, in this one, I've taken the underside of the mushroom. This one's called a wood ear because it looks like an ear, and some of them look like human ears. But the underside like tells us a lot about what kind of mushroom it is. So if you ever want someone to tell you what it might be, always make sure that it's not easy to identify from photos, but at least have that underside, in there as well. And yes, in your garden situation, I can't recommend enough to mulch. Never have your soil exposed. Always have a lot of like litter on the ground. Don't clean up. Don't blow your litter away. Litter
That makes sense.
is what
Yeah, because
is
obviously people are clearing all away and
full of
making it all lovely. And of
life.
course,
I do a lot of
oh,
my
look at
process.
that one. Oh, wow.
That's right. Yes, one of my favorite. It's called Symatoderma elegans, and it's called. We also call it the leathery goblet, because it becomes like leather when it grows huge, and it's like a cup to drink from. I imagine animals drink from it when it accumulates moisture, water in the. But yeah, definitely as much leaf litter and mulch that you can have that's local, especially in your garden, especially if you're wanting to grow a garden in a good sort of a wholesome way. Keep bringing that mulch in, because that's where all your microbes that are good are going to be. So mulch from forest, you don't want to strip forests of mulch, but create, from your own plants in your backyard or whatever. Make sure you do create it or buy or bring in or, source. These are coral fungi. I love how they just come in. It looks like a coral from the ocean, They've just come they've got so many shapes and colors and sizes. But yeah, that's what I would recommend, is really just get, being careful. Whoop, that was not meant to go in there, guys. This was a foray we did. Oh, that's funny. I wonder if the others also went in there. No, there was other friends. We were like playing with a friend's hat. We were on a mycology foray, actually at Mary Cairncross Reserve, and that's where these photos came from. And that one went in there. I feel quite embarrassed now. I'm all like red like a mushroom.
No, don't. It's all good. It's all good fun. I love it.
I love the hat. It was so cool. Yeah. So yeah, basically.
So can I ask, how many
Yes.
how many species of fungi are there that
Oh my
you've
gosh.
documented?
Oh, I don't know how many I've documented. Not many compared to how many species. They reckon like they reckon millions possibly there are. Let me have a look. Google search.
Really?
Number
Wow.
of species, right, of fungi documented. I have to look it up because I don't know. The beauty of having seminars online. Yeah, there's actually a paper that got published, and they're like saying the scientific paper says 5.1 million, possibly, but it
Wow.
says the paper itself says the fungi 1, 2, 3, 5.1 million species. They're trying to estimate, because we
That's
probably
incredible.
only have, but we've only described 70,000, right? And potentially there's 5.1 million, and that shows you how sort of understudied they are. In Australia, particularly, mycology is like the least studied science. it's appalling, really, because we're losing species at an alarming rate. And you know how you've got like, well, we've got these lists that scientists go and say, okay, this species is almost extinct, right? But for fungi, there's literally only a couple, and that's only because people are fighting to get them on the red list, which is the near extinction or extinction list, or threatened, species. So this is really terrible, because when we do any development, or we're clearing land for cattle grazing or other agricultural purposes, what happens is people come in and they will go, okay, let's just do an environmental assessment, but fungi never get looked at. And apparently one of the last remaining of one species got a toilet put on it, because no one cared that it was there, and only people that are really into it would know that fungi is only found there now, and because they're so ephemeral and only fruit really during, so you only know they're there because they're fruiting because it's raining. But if it's not raining, like with drought periods, we don't know what's surviving, So yes, so there's many millions of species to be found and to be described scientifically, but it's not very common to do that. And I really would encourage people really in this conversation to take an interest, because it's a wonderful hobby to photograph fungi. You can do it with the phone these days. They come in, so these are tiny, like maybe, I don't know, half a centimeter tall, these little guys. But once you start doing it, you can then put it up on iNaturalist, which is like an app that anyone can have. And it's a citizen science app. So the data of any animal, plant, fungi, anything you take a photo of, if you put it up there, scientists will find it and they will log it and catalogue it. And the Atlas of Living Australia catalogues from iNaturalist. This is the adult form of the leathery goblet, by the way, Andrina. You know that little one we saw earlier?
Yeah,
the pinkish one?
yeah.
This is the adult form of it. It grows quite large. It can be very big. But yeah, so
Amazing.
like documenting fungi is so lovely, and I know we can't identify them from photos. It's very difficult. But the more we do that, and the more scientists identify them and DNA barcode them, what will happen is eventually iNaturalist artificial intelligence will start picking up on Australian species, because America knows they're fungi. They study them well. In Europe as well. It's just Australia, we're really lagging behind in mycology. Sorry, I just have to cough because I just swallowed my own saliva in the wrong spot. 1 sec. All right. I almost choked on my own.
Tell me, like sometimes you're going along, you'll see a fairy ring. Well, we call them fairy rings, but you can just go and they're all in one spot. So can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So when you have like the way fungi grow, they go through this like spreading of their mycelium sideways, right? So from a center, if there's a bit of a fungi eating something like piece of wood or something, it will spread across like in a star-like fashion, So what it's showing you is that it's consuming. It's like on the petri dish when you do science and you put the fungi in the middle of the petri dish, the colony will always spread in this circular fashion, and it's feeding from the outside. So when you have a fairy ring, the mycelium has gone, the colony has spread to a level where it's now going to fruit to produce its spores. And so at the edge of the colony, it's producing the mushrooms, because that's where the mycelium is mostly getting its food, and it's really getting like it's pumping, at that. So it's able to reproduce, it's able to grow a mushroom. And so you're seeing this ring effect as a result. Quite a wonderful thing to see, isn't it? And it's a lovely name, fairy. I love mushrooms in a way that they're always associated with folklore, like either fairies, unfortunately a lot of times with witches. And there's a lot of all kinds of, there's quite a few poisonous mushrooms, not quite a few, very little few. But then they get a really bad reputation in the media. And over the eons, people start really sort of disliking them. And I think that translates to why mycology is such a poorly studied science, is because mushrooms just don't have a good reputation, for all these generations of sort of like, it's very hard to change our minds over eons of, bad folklore associated with fungi. They're like the toadstool. Like when we look at the names we use for things, like, it doesn't sound good. People don't like toads. I love toads, but, So I love the, toad. If I saw a toad sitting on a mushroom, I'd be in heaven, but most people probably wouldn't be. So it gets a bit, I think we really need to start loving fungi more. Can I tell you some more wonderful facts, or do you want to ask me wonderful facts about fungi?
Please. No, it's fascinating because, like I said, I don't know anything about fungi. But now, obviously, I'm going to be out looking when I'm on my. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be sharing photos of fungi they find.
That's awesome. We've got. I think for me, like once again, if I just keep going back to like their role in the environment, the fact that they can take carbon down, and I'm talking mostly about these symbiotic mycorrhizal fungi. But in soil overall, if you want a good soil, you need to have fungi. And what's really interesting is soils. This is actually one of the most fascinating facts I'm learning at the moment. Is people are always trying to, in Australia specifically, weeds are a huge problem, right? Especially on farm levels, but also on a farm level, but also like in nature, we're getting more and more weeds, and people are like trying to fight them with pesticides, with chemicals, with herbicides. The thing is, what's happening is the damage. That looks like an eye, doesn't it? That's a stinkhorn ready to pop. What happens is when we deplete the biomass of fungi through plowing our agricultural systems, nothing else can grow but weeds, because weeds are fast growing, reproducing, and they just want to have their fun and go. And what happens is they get fed through bacterial systems. The fungi have been demolished through pesticide spraying, herbicides, but also specifically using plowing. We demolish the structure of the fungal networks in our soils. And what ends up happening is only bacteria can survive because they're small enough not to get destroyed by plowing. And what we end up doing is selecting for weeds. But if we were to stop doing all these agricultural practices that are actually destroying our food sources and our, atmosphere, because all the carbon is going up into the atmosphere every time you break down these mycelial systems that are supposed to be holding the carbon, it now all goes into the atmosphere. And we've got bacteria selecting for weeds, and then we spray them even more, and we will lose even more fungi, and then we select for more weeds. And I just love to drive this idea that we can farm in such a beautiful way, where we farm with fungi, because you asked how do we encourage these fungi. But really, it's about choosing, if we as consumers, because not many of us in the audience may not be farmers, but even talking about this to people in general will start the conversation rolling. But we can ask to choose foods, or we can choose foods that are, for example, farmed in a biological way, where there is no chemicals being sprayed, and there is no no-till agriculture. And I'm pretty sure in the UK and the US, maybe not so much in Australia yet, foods are being more labelled, because people are starting to pick up on these trends. And the more labelling of that occurs like that, the more we know that that's a good practice, that we can support these farmers that are doing this. And for me, it's all about learning how to support farmers, how to work with farmers to get fungi back in the soil, and how to work with land regenerators, people that are looking after bush, doing bush regeneration, because once again, glyphosate is being used, but it's killing the fungal networks. And there's this new method of, cut and paste, of putting glyphosate, Roundup, on a weed, and then it goes, and the hope is, and it does happen, where you cut it, you paste the herbicide on it, and it gets taken by the root system. But the thing is, we don't realize that a lot of these weeds are actually collaborating underground with trees. And when this happens, you're poisoning your tree slowly. So every time you do that, you're actually poisoning your trees. The trees we're trying to save, we're poisoning them. We can't poison one aspect of the environment and not poison another, and not poison ourselves in the end. So I'm just like super, super excited about working with as many interested people, farmers, land regenerators, gardeners, anybody that's willing to experiment and take it to another level, where we actually regenerate the fungal systems, where we encourage fungal proliferation, where we don't destroy them, where we don't damage the living system that it creates in the earth. Fungi create soils, they bind they bind your mineral component of the soil, hold it together with bacterial glues, and creates pore spaces. You can imagine when you've got these mycelial arms weaving around your soil particles and you're holding them together, you're creating pores. So you're introducing oxygen into the soil, you're allowing water and moisture to seep in, and then worms can move through, and then this beautiful ecosystem starts to happen. And I do have a presentation on YouTube about that, how to use fungi to regenerate landscapes and reverse climate change and stuff. So my YouTube channel has that video that I've actually recorded with slides. But I want to run a course on this. From next year onwards, I'll be running courses on all of this that I'm talking about, particularly with soil regeneration and returning foods and using regenerative practices, and how to achieve that, how to have your own worm farm in every garden, how never to throw your food scraps, but feed your fungi with your food scraps by feeding your worms, doing all the, even human manure, like our poo is just amazing. It's such an amazing resource we flush down the toilet, and yet fungi can transform it into the most nutritious food for our food plants. I know it sounds funny, but trees are eating themselves, so why can't we? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's these once again patterns in nature when we just observe what a tree does, and we're like, well, actually we excrete. Where is our excrement going? It's not going into that circular economy. It's actually just getting dissipated and thrown away. We're throwing away all these resources we could be using to literally draw down carbon into the soil, feed fungi, and create these amazing potentials for future generations, because I don't want children to live on landfills, and have food that's only poisonous to them. It's just awful, and it doesn't have to be that way. And you know what the most amazing part about all this? It's free. So I'm talking about getting us off pesticides and off fertilizers, because chemical fertilizers kill fungi as well, because that's what fungi are supposed to do for the plant in the soil. Like, our food plants meant to have these symbiotic relationships as well, but they can't, because we keep feeding them junk food that takes fossil fuel to make. We have to make fertilizers and pesticides, we need fossil fuels to do that, which is really expensive to do. So we're using, very, very bad technical, like, we're just doing it so wrong at the moment still, But imagine getting people off of that, and you're telling a farmer, this will cost you almost nothing. Just a little bit of a tweak to your machinery, your current machinery. Free, your scraps are going to feed your worms. Your worms are going to feed the fungi, or sorry, the other way around. The fungi feed the worms spread the fungi. And you're putting that on your land, and that can even come from your own poo, which would be safe, because the worms transform it completely, and there's no pathogens whatsoever when you do it right. Imagine that. That means no farmer will have to spend money anymore on anything other than growing food and making a profit. And what that means is free, healthy food for humans, pretty much. Like, there's so much amazing potential, and people can't understand when it's that simple and it's that cheap. When it's almost like people are so used to that they have to spend loads of money on some industrial thing that someone made, during the World War II. Do you know what I mean? And now has become this thing that we're dependent on. And I just find it so sad, because it's such a waste. It's such a kill. We're paying to kill ourselves. Like, do you know what I mean? We're buying food that is nuked, and we're killing ourselves with it. I just find it so miserable, and at the same time so exciting, because imagine if we can change it. And it's so doable. Like, honestly, like, people are doing it. Elaine Ingham in the US, she's pioneered this whole soil food web concept. She's teaching it, and I want to support that by creating courses in Australia in the same thought process, and really focusing on the fungi, because it's the fungal. And this is what I was trying to get at earlier, Andrina, when you were talking about trees and relying on fungi. What happens really is, and this fits into this model of, if we have fungi, we don't have weeds, is that the below ground, as above and so below, is the same, in the successional stages of how nature works. So weeds are pioneer plants that need to work and do a fast life cycle that they have, and then they have to be decomposed. And once they're being decomposed, fungi start proliferating, and then trees can grow. But in a biological system in the soil, and you can see this under the microscope, you have no, like, if there's weeds, there's only going to be bacteria. If you want to grow a tree, you have to have fungi in the soil. So you can see the succession of how things grow in the soil and progression. And the more fungal the soil, the more biomass of fungi, the older the trees that grow and create that system. You know, it's just fascinating. So if we want to grow trees, we can't just pop them into an agricultural soil and hope they'll survive. They might survive, but if we really want to work on the sort of ecosystem, we need to start from the soil. And it's always been like that. Nature's always done it for eons, since the beginning of time. So I'm just like, we nearly just copy Mother Nature, copy all of the systems that have been designed in her. And yeah, I just think, gosh, so much potential. But I'm blabbing on, and we've only got a few minutes left. Any questions?
No. I don't know if you're on a time frame, but we can go over. That's not a problem. But honestly, cool. This is absolutely fascinating. Like I said, I didn't know anything, but just amazing. And so what I was thinking, because there's a lot of people that want to live off grid now and get land and set up. So, and obviously there's not trees everywhere. So if you're starting from scratch on some land, and you haven't got, say, it's all land at the minute. So could you start a corner with the mulch, just putting the mulch there and letting it do its own thing, and then, either you plant your trees or you just let nature take its course?
Yeah, you can do both, depending on how much water there is on the land. Like if you live in Australia, like I do, in a really dry environment, there's obviously different methods of doing that. But really the mulch and the tree is gonna, the plants, whatever they are, even if they're weeds to start with, because that's what a lot of the land has been degraded and overgrazed and plowed, and all kinds of things have happened to it, and poisoned. So it might take a while, but as long as you have this cover of plants, your fungi are always going to be sequestering. And as long as you pushing the succession, so trying to plant something better, like a shrub rather than just your weeds, because some people, some garden plants are just weeds, like they're just weedy. They become weedy because they're pretty and we want them. And it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that they're very low sort of, like a lot of grasses are not as, they're just kind of fast growing, fast reproducing and spreading, that's their role. And that they all have a role in the environment. But I would definitely go for what you said. Bring in that mulch, create that mulch. You can even use a system where you start chopping and dropping, helping nature to, how I was saying, a forest always drops and then the fungi decompose all of that matter and then bring it back down to the plant. You can assist that by literally chopping and dropping, and the tree, like pruning the tree, so to speak, pruning tree or a shrub or whatever, and dropping, helping nature do that dropping delicately. You don't want to like hack away your whole plant. But if you don't have a source where you can go and get it from nature, buy it from a farmer, like whatever, but whatever organic matter you can bring it, have a pile, make sure you've got a worm farm, go and research worm farms, and make sure when you do worm farming to always add just as much carbon. So like the dry material, like shredded paper, mulch, leaf litter, exactly the same amount to your worms as you do with food. Because when you just give food, it becomes very bacterial dominated, your worm castings. And please don't ever use worm juice, because people call it worm juice, but when it comes off and stays in water for a long time, it becomes very, very anaerobic. So there's no fungi in there. There's only bacteria, and a lot of the bacteria are anaerobic and pathogenic. So you don't want to put that on your plants. If you have a worm farm, you want your plants to get the best out of your worm farm, right? So you can put all your food scraps in the worm farm. Make sure you add your carbon. So as I mentioned earlier, any mulch or any hay, dry material, make sure that it's varied. Have like leaf litter, add varied materials, add that to and then feed your castings from your worms to your plants. And then that will start really developing that succession of your soil moving up, good for your veggies and then good for trees. But the more fungi you can have, if you look at nature and see what fungi eat, and that's mostly very, very woody stuff, you want to sort of just repeat that in your worm farm. So I can't stress that enough. If you want to have a productive garden or any vegetation you want to have on your land, I would do that. And I wouldn't so much take the castings, because, you know, with microbes, you just have to inoculate. So you can literally strain, put a bit of your worm farm castings into a bag that's like, you know, those nut bags or something that's got little bits like holes, you know, like you want to strain it. And you want to put that in water and you want to massage all your microbes, all your fungi from that bag filled with your worms castings. Put the worm castings back in your worm farm because they probably have worms in them. And then use the liquid, but make sure it's fresh. Never leave it for any longer than you have to. Just do it and go and water your plants with that. And I guarantee that you'll start getting some really good growth if you're struggling. Because, you know, I mean, I don't know where you live. It depends. Some, you know, some areas already are doing well. Like if you're in the rainforest and you just want to increase that forest, I'd still suggest to do it though, because I think it's just a wonderful way of teaching your children, teaching your grandchildren, teaching your neighbors. So if you're into this sort of stuff and you know that you want to do good and you don't want to put your food in landfill, I would go for that. I would definitely have a worm farm. It's one of the most wonderful, wonderful things you could have, actually, because it's such a fantastic, the worms do all the work, and they're like a digestive system that moves full of fungi and good bacteria and stuff, and they kill all the pathogens in their gut, you know, when they consume them. So even if you have your poo in your worm farm, you know, my friends have worm farms with poos, and I looked at it under the microscope, and it's fantastic stuff. And I would encourage everyone to compost their poo through a worm farm, because worms literally eat pathogens. So
you said some keywords again that takes us into the galaxies. I mean, in the sci-fi thing, we have a tractor beam. So we have a tractor that goes and plows a field up. But we have the word wormhole. So it enables you to travel from one side of the space to another. Yeah.
Totally. It's the same thing because that's what a wormhole is in the ground. It allows all these creatures to travel and plant roots to move and grow. So yeah, same thing. As
above, so below.
A little bit slower, but yeah, there's a reason why it's called a wormhole, right? There's got to be a reason for that. They're good. Yeah, and of course worms aerate, you know, they aerate the soil and they aerate the worm farm as well. So you can have a quite closed system, but have that aeration and the spaces where things can travel and move through. It's wonderful. And honestly, another thing, because I'm going to develop these courses that I keep talking about, like putting all this information around fungal, you know, how to increase our fungal biomass in soil specifically, and the background of what's happened, and, you know, but also, what was I going to say with that? Microscopy. It's another wonderful thing. Like, because my PhD has been centered around looking down the microscope for 4 years in a dark room, looking at the organs of the cells, you know, the fungal cells. And now I've gone back into it and looking at soils with a microscope to see how dead or alive they are. And, you know, this is another great thing to get into, is either learn to do that, and, you know, of course, you can just like, contact me, and I'm happy to share how to get to that point. But imagine kids understanding this, you know, it's going to schools and showing them under the microscope what happens in the soil, and teaching them about these fungal systems that need to be on plant roots, and getting that message to children, I think, is another, you know, like, it needs to happen. Without the education, we have no hope, really, because it takes someone like, it's so rare really still now to hear about like fungi, even though now there's all these really amazing people talking about them, you know, like, you really, guys, you need to read this book. I'll just look at it on my thing because it's just there. Oh my gosh, I forget what it's called. I can't see it from here. Sheldrake, his last name is.
Rupert Sheldrake.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Do you guys know what I'm talking
What's it
about?
called? Yeah, but I can't hear. He's psychic.
Oh, really?
He's
You
psychic.
guys need to interview him as well, probably. Okay, Entangled Life
right.
by Merlin Sheldrake. It's such a good book on fungi, and he's such a poetic writer. He's English, and it's a beautifully written book. So it's basically all the things I've touched upon, but on a very different level as well, because he's got a lot of science in there, but as well as he's got just a lovely way of writing. And he's just, so there's people out there talking about this. It's just, we need more of us. We need more people getting excited about fungi and speaking about them. And not just the fungi, it needs to be about all the organisms.
I think Jocelyn mentioned about a film at the beginning on Netflix, said a fabulous film, Fungi, or I'm not sure what it's called.
Fantastic
Fungi.
Fungi.
Yes,
and Jeff, that goes back to Jeff's comment where he talked about Star Trek. So Fantastic Fungi is made based on the guy in Fantastic Fungi, the documentary. So the captain of the ship is Paul Stamets, and so that's the link there for you, Jeff, because I know you love your sci-fi. So Fantastic Fungi is fantastical, so you'll love it. It's all about psychedelics as well, a lot of it. So,
right. Hey, comfrey, which is a plant, and a few years ago, I went down to the Gold Coast to Mudgeebar to the Mud Brick Herb Farm, and they had a little 3-hour little talk, and it was all about comfrey. And I was gobsmacked that it was the most potent natural fertilizer. And what you got to do is, she had a 20-litre pail, and you gather up all the comfrey roots as well as the leaves, and you put it in there, and you compact it down, and then you put water into it, put a lid on it, leave it there for 4, 5, 6 weeks, and that stuff breaks down and becomes the most potent NPK, natural fertilizer. And it's so concentrated that you then have to break it down like 20 to 1, 20 parts water to 1 part of this comfrey fertilizer. And amazing stuff. And she also says that in her chook run, they've got a natural slope. And at the end of the chook run, she planted comfrey. And when they throw in all the scraps into the chook run there, and the stuff starts rolling down and goes into the comfrey, what happens is the chooks go down there and start pecking for the food, but they also start pecking the leaf of comfrey. And comfrey is a natural bone healer. It was used in the Crimean War in World War I when they run out of plaster of Paris. So they used to make a poultice and then put it over the body. And it was a natural healing agent. So with the chooks going down there and picking away, they then end up getting really strong bones, the structure of their bones, and they don't really need to have antibiotics, what we see in the factory-produced chickens and cows, sheep and goats and stuff. So natural product, not only that, but also as a poultice. So that's the first subject I wanted to talk about. The second one was a fantastic guy who came up on the ABC TV show called Australian Story. His name was Peter Andrews.
Yes.
And he was from northern New South Wales, and he actually showed you how you could drought-proof a farm. So just behind me, you'll see a dairy farm there, and that's just natural vegetation there that you can see, and it's in the hinterland of the Gold Coast and Queensland. So his concept was where you got all these little streams and stuff, he would throw in rocks and throw in logs as it would happen in the wildlife, rather than get an excavator and create a straight drain. He would just allow these logs and rocks to go into the waterways, and that would create these little eddies. And once the little eddies came in, all the other insects would start coming, and then you'd have a little stuff would actually start growing in the water. And then all of a sudden you got the birds coming around, and then they start dropping their poop, but also picking up seeds. And before you know it, you start getting this permaculture farm happening where you've got water, and not only have you got water, you've got all the insects, and you start growing it. And he showed you how to drought-proof property. So his story was really profound because he was doing it, and then his bank came along and foreclosed on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a family tragedy in it. But lucky enough, he had a sponsor in the name of Jerry Harvey, who's got his farms for horses, and he actually gone and drought-proofed his farm, and then he drought-proofed Richard Pratt, who's got Visiboard. Richard's now since died, but the ABC helicopter went over all the northern or New South Wales land, and you can see it was brown. It was just drought, just took the whole countryside to a point of dust, really. And then all of a sudden you come around and you see these valleys filled with greenery, and that was because Peter Andrews had gone and showed how you could drought-proof farm. So to his credit, Jerry Harvey took the case to agricultural scientists to show them that there's another way of looking at it rather than following, academic scholars. There's other ways of looking at life itself. And a fantastic story. So there's two things there that I've come to know and realize, there's a lot more to all this than meets the eye. Eh?
That's right. And in Peter Andrews' work, which is called natural sequence farming, the beauty is, once again, without the water, we have no plants. We don't have the, once again, fungal networks. He was basically securing, because what he does is he puts it on a contour. It's like creating water holding basically devices along the contour. So I went to his son's workshop not long ago, because Peter's too old now to really travel and teach. He was going to come to the planting festival before COVID. We had him booked to come and speak, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But his son is very passionate, and he's taking it to another level, and he's got a farm in Gympie where you can go and have a look at their place. And he's taken on all of his father's teachings plus other things, like putting nutrients above your worm farm. I'm still at worm farmland. You're putting your nutrients above, like at the top of the property, so when it's a hillside, it comes down and feeds below. Really great concepts, and it's all about really, how Australia used to be before we cleared it. He talks about, even Aboriginal paintings literally show the different layout of the landscape that was based on, as you say, like all these trees fallen across and creating these natural swales, in the landscape, oftentimes in a contour, and creating wetlands. This country used to be wet, and because we came and cleared it all and made it all pretty, as Andrina said earlier, trying to clear it all out, make it into the English garden, it doesn't work, not with the little rainfall that we have in Australia. So very interesting, and very, like, there's people regenerating deserts through this method as well, like in permaculture. They go out into desert and create these water holding shapes in the landscape, contour lines, and that holds moisture, and then of course you get the moisture's held, so you can grow plants, and it just keeps going. So there's so many methods, and I think Jeff, you're right, using such things as natural sequence farming, syntropic agriculture is another way. Beautiful. If people can look up syntropic agriculture, and we've got a representative, a friend of mine, Tiago Barbosa. He comes from Brazil, and he's brought it to Australia from the man that's created this. He didn't create it, he just studied nature, and he does a lot of the chop and drop of the, they keep chopping a tree, and they've got their gardens. All the food is grown around the trees bring the water, and then they drop the wood for the fungi. So once again, these systems working in synchrony, working together, we can do so much. Plus, if you do the worm farming and really get people to really have good worm castings, and that's what I'm doing in my local area at the moment. I'm asking my friends to give me their castings so I can have a look what's in them under the microscope, make sure the biology is really good, and then we apply it to plants rather than ad hoc trying, why not do the best we can? Because if we know our worm farm is not doing the best, we can tell through a microscope whether it is or not. And to me, like, it's that fungal biomass. And what I do is I literally count the biomass of the fungi, so we know which succession of plant we can grow. Like, say you want to grow corn, you need to have a specific ratio of biomass of fungi to bacteria. So we're able to look at that under the microscope, analyze it, put it through a statistical program, and then know what we're aiming for, what's missing, and what we can add through a worm farming or a composting system. That's what Elaine's work, life's work, has been, Elaine Ingham's, in the US. And, you know, she's basically taken on Monsanto, like, you know, so she's a lady that was pretty much lost or left her job because she threatened, because she started speaking up about Monsanto doing some really stuff that was very, very, could have ruined food crops as we know it, with genetically modified organisms. And she spoke up at a conference and got told that if she does that, like, her job is, like, she's not going to give, you know, to the university bring as much money as Monsanto does. So she left. This is the kind of thing scientists, when scientists come across and want to do good stuff, we often get, yes, it's very tough. It's very tough for a lot of people that I just go against the grain when they know something's not right. They know it's corrupt. You know, I mean, this happens all the time in every industry, you know. But the people that I've been learning from, ironically, are these kind of people that have stood up and said no. And they've gone off and they're teaching it to the public, and that's how the change is going to happen. It's not going to happen through academia, because academics, and I've been in that world, you don't really share that knowledge with the public. We need to get out there and speak to the public like we're doing now. We need to, you know, we need to educate the masses, the children. We need to educate the children. And I think children will only be educated if the parents are open-hearted as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really trickles down. And it's kind of like, we all need to just start loving nature more, and loving ourselves enough to know that what's good for us is the natural world, you know, and being connected to it in whichever way you can, whether it's taking photos of fungi or flowers, and putting them on learning through iNaturalist, as I mentioned earlier. Seriously, I can't stress enough how good this app is. Next month, I'm doing an interview similar to this for AXA. I'm a member of a committee member on the Australian Citizen Science Association. So we're getting people excited about doing science in their own backyard, or joining projects like the Mycology research project at Woodfordia that I'm running at the moment. You know, anyone can join it, and we can do great things, and we can learn. And my thing is, I love getting science communicated. So I'm a science communicator, but I also love other scientists presenting to the public. So, like, I'm really keen on getting more and more collaboration between public and science. We can't keep people in the dark, you know, and we can't expect scientists to do the work because it's too big now. You can't have one fungi person, crazy person that loves fungi to the max, going out there and looking for fungi, because what can one person find in a lifetime? Imagine what 100 people can find, and imagine what, you know, millions of people can find. This is where now it's getting exciting, because now we've got technology to empower. Like I'm saying, microscope, anyone can buy a microscope these days. Even when I started, you couldn't just have a microscope. You couldn't just buy a computer back, you know, when I was growing up in Poland. You know what I mean? Nowadays, everyone has one, and we can all become these really interested people. And it's so much fun. You'll be lost forever. Like, when I look under the microscope, I'm there for hours taking videos of creatures that probably no one's ever seen before, you know? Sometimes I find organisms that no one has ever seen before. So, Jeff, if you want, if you're talking about sci-fi, I will share some of my links to some of the videos of the organisms I've taken from mulch, from litter, under the microscope, and you will think you're in another universe. There's monsters out there, microscopic but gorgeous monsters. But I'll share that with you because I think you'll love it. I think you'll be like, yeah, she's definitely crazy. No, I'm just joking.
Oh no, I'd love to see as well. No.
Really great.
Oh, honestly, Sandra, this has been absolutely amazing. So I'm hoping that everyone and replays will go out and take more notice of fungi and see what they can do. You know, like science in your own. And yeah, so I know I will certainly be doing what I can and let it spread out. You know, this is the underground movement, isn't it?
Yes.
Well,
And any questions that anyone has, like, feel free to find me on Facebook just by searching my name and private messaging me or whatever. I think, and I've also got an email. I think you guys put it up there, but you can just contact me at loveoursoils at gmail.com. That's my personal one. But if you can just, which is also fine. But I'd like to really start using the Love Our Soils at gmail.com email, because it's a good one. But yeah, email me if you want to know anything more. I'll be more than happy to share. Yeah, that's the soil biology little link there, that where I'm putting all the stuff, microscopy and soil, you know, how to get our soils regenerated stuff on this one. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much for having me. Hey.
You know, there's other aspects to this. I mean, when you start looking around, I mean, the story of Findhorn, you know, the magic of Findhorn. I mean, they took it to another level as well, because they brought people's awareness to the elemental world and the diva world, as well as the other kingdoms that you generally have to feel and sense, you know, so they really opened you up to a whole new realm as well. So it seems like you got to make the connection with all these realms to be able to be part of it rather than step out of it. And I think psychologically, when the guy Cameron brought out that movie Avatar, somewhere along the line, it triggered a deep psyche within the human race to be able to gravitate towards that movie and sense and feel something special in that movie, particularly with the connection to the land, and particularly through the roots of the big tree.
Yes. And you know, these films, like, you know, it's like we all have it. We've all experienced these magical moments in nature. And, you know, and that's why people like myself are so passionate about this, because it's like, for me, I don't want to lose it. Like, that is the only, like, joy. Like, you know, sometimes it feels like if you're like, and I think kids have this wonder as well in them, you know, they know that they can feel this magical sense of when you interact in nature with nature. And this is where, like, even though phones are such a disruptive thing, but when you can use a phone, like, mostly I take photos of, like, that's what I use my phone for mostly, you know, to take photos of insects, fungi, videos. And the better the technology gets, the more you want to use it for that rather than Facebook or anything else. You know, use Facebook as a tool to communicate. But really, you want to, like, you can now use your phone for science, especially if you've got an app like iNaturalist, you know, and that wonder of the movie becomes your own, like, you know, one thing that you can actually, when you can feel Avatar, I tell you a little story. We went out on a fungi foray just before COVID already started taking over the world, the whole thing that happened with it. And they were starting to shut down all the, what's the name of it? Sort of like gatherings. But we went on a mycological society, Queensland Mycological Society, like a residential foray. So that means we went out, a bunch of us, you know, with the society, scientists and citizen scientists, to look for fungi. And my friend brought a light that was a UV light. And we were, you know, the arch, the natural arch in Leamington National Park. Is it Leamington or Springbrook? Yes. I can't remember which national park, Springbrook. So we went there, and at night we took this light, and it's a UV light, and everything was the color of Avatar. Mushrooms were glowing pink. Wow. I should have sent you those photos to show. So, like, everything was glowing. Like, there was millipedes that were like fluorescent blue. Honestly, it was exactly like, and on top of that, we had some magic mushrooms, some of us. We found in the wild, you know, no, there's no one selling anything to us. It was completely legit. We, like, literally just ate from nature. We foraged. So you can imagine, I was in heaven. Like, this was like, and like, it was so much fun. And the connection that you got with the forest, with this UV light and the magic of the mushroom, it was just like the most beautiful thing. It was just yeah, and it was completely innocent. It was so childlike. We were all just in awe of nature. There was nothing other than just this connection, you know. And yeah, giving that to kids, that's my dream. That's honestly my dream. I run a lot of like, you know, sort of adventures with kids at Wood 40-hour work, and adults get like children. They just become like big children, you know. They start looking at the insects and the fungi, and they just go nuts, and they just melt, and the next thing you know it, they're just like in love. And this old man that had cancer once told me, like, he already, I think, had healed it by then. Oh, there it is. That's it. That's where we were. And it all glows at night with the glowworms as well. that oh my God. Yeah, so basically this man was so beautiful. Like, I remember talking to him, and he's like, he was like a child, you know, and he was like, you know, this healed me. This healed me. Like the connection that I have to nature, he told me a few stories, is like, I believe that cured my cancer, you know. Like, he was just so grateful to be alive, you know. Yeah, just, it's beautiful. And I'd love to be able to share that with people, you know. It's a true connection through that nature connects us all, and makes
I know
us
when
better human beings, you know.
Yeah, I went to Springbrook, where I've been up there a few times, got lovely orb pictures up there. So yeah, very special place. Yeah.
Wow,
Anyway,
beautiful. Yeah.
Well,
well,
Yes.
hang on, I've got them photos. Carry on talking, you girls. I'm natural.
Of the aura.
Oh, you're going to see these ones, mate. Knock you on your, put you on your bum.
Do it.
Yeah, hang on. In.
so if anybody wants you for talks or workshops, they just get in touch with you, and you'll go off and share your wonderful passion.
Absolutely. Anytime. I can talk, you know, about this forever.
Oh, it's just lovely.
It's so much
You know,
fun.
you're sharing your passion.
Wow, look at that. The one on the bottom is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are they like, what do you think they are of? Like, what is the aura image is? Is it like a spirit or?
Yeah. I mean, I've acquired some beautiful orbs, even like when we were in Adelaide and talking to a cow,
Orbs,
as you do. and the orb on his third eye, it's just like, oh my God, amazing. You know, and you can see it's something else, but look at that one. That's lovely.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
That
another
one's cool,
subject,
the one on the bottom. Like, it's got like a little cross in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a whole other area of reality, hey?
And
we're not even, yeah. I've noticed my presence on your Facebook was quite unusual, in the sense that you normally have people who talk about very different topics, but I'm grateful that you guys were able to accommodate the fungi topic as well.
Yeah, because I had to. I couldn't think of your name, the surname, and I thought, you know, so I got in touch with Linda, who gave me your info so I could connect with you to make this happen.
Aww.
So thanks to the long friendship we've had and connections. So brilliant.
Yeah.
But no, I love your passion. It's just amazing.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And Andrina, I hope you come back to Australia sometime soon again, hey?
I hope so too. I miss it. But there you go.
Yeah. I think the world is sort of now back into travel, so, you know.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
Festival is on this year again, so, you know.
Everything is before I travel anywhere. Thank you very much. Not playing that game. Anyway. Right, well, I'm going to thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your passion and educating so many of us, because like I said, I knew nothing, but now you've opened my awareness on that. And you know, when you open your awareness on something, you go somewhere and you say, oh, look at all that fungi there, and then you see fungi there, you know. You've opened your senses more, so it'd be interesting. But please you showed me on your phone that picture of the lovely pink ones that you took.
Okay.
Can you share that, because that's a lovely picture.
I will send it.
Really, yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah,
to
it was
share.
really fun today. It was really strange because this little reserve, I've never seen fungi in it, and Oh, today, just after all this rain, it's honestly, it was like I couldn't move a meter without taking a photo. Like
No,
I was like, I
bet.
have to go soon. I have to go soon. I was like a kid that you couldn't get away from the lolly shop, you know. It was really nice. Oh, just love it. Anyway, thanks, guys. Lovely to meet you, Jeff and
Oh,
Andrina. Thank you so much for having me. And
no, it's our pleasure.
I
Thank
hope
you.
our
I wish you
audience had got
good luck.
something out of this.
Oh, I'm
All right,
sure.
guys. All the best.
All
Big
right.
kisses.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Stay there.